Man, I know the weather is it's maybe not great, but it's always a great day to have an opportunity to explore the world. Our guest today is Matt Koenig, who's the owner and founder of Alliance Athletics, and also has been very involved in the 3x3 basketball world for quite some time, and just basketball in Manitoba and globally in general. Man, I didn't know, what was it that really inspired you to like go to Australia? Because I know that yes, there's a lot of people that travel from Canada there and get working visas, but why Australia for you?
Uh, yeah, so really great question to start off with. Essentially, Australia, like when I came over here for the first time about 4 years ago, and it was on like a working holiday visa. So there's lots of people that have done that. You come over, you get a visa, you can essentially work for whoever you want, do whatever you want. It's like a long extended holiday. And the only stipulation is you can't have like a long-term employer for past a year. So I came out here and I just realized there's a bunch of differences with how basketball and sports in general are done here compared to like the American or North American system. It's much more European, so that's club based. And so essentially, athletes, instead of going to college and then trying to go and make the jump to pros, what we do here is they'll play in pretty much what I realized here is that with the club system, players play in a club and then they work their way all the way up into the professional ranks. And there's a whole bunch of semi-pro leagues and opportunities for players to play. Whereas in Canada, unless you're playing, like now we have the CEBL, which is somewhat kind of a stepping stone into like the higher professional leagues. But for the vast majority of players, there's not really anything there. In Australia, there's 10 to 12 different divisions and leagues that you can play in where you can make, a couple $1,000 a month all the way up until you play into the NBL, which is essentially like the NBA of Australia, the highest level. So for me, as a strength and conditioning coach, I just found it like a gold mine for what I do. Like I work with athletes to keep their bodies healthy long term. I improve their athletic ability. I teach them how to manage their body. And in Australia, there just seems to be way more athletes that they have careers on the side of their playing their teams, and they're willing to invest and spend the money because they're playing semi-professional or professional basketball much longer than the average player in Canada would. So I just saw it as a good opportunity. I came out here the first time and I just really got into the culture and I got into meeting a lot of people, got into the basketball world out here. And I just really wanted to come back. And that's what brought me back here to getting like a more long-term visa and, setting up a great situation for me to come out here and do what I do.
Man, it's that kind of experience I think is really important for people to find. I've been recently talking with friends or people who, or if you go on YouTube or watch travel videos about like, oh, these are the great places you want to go as a digital nomad. And then there's the other side where it's like, oh, well, these are the things that no one talks about as being a digital nomad, blah, blah, blah. But what you've done is you've kind of married the two in the sense that you can actually move to a new place and expose yourself to an environment that actually works way better for what you want to do. But you also get to travel and still be a Canadian citizen and get to explore a different part of the world without having to feel like you're giving up everything and you have no friends and you're just like a drifter.
Correct. And I've definitely been a drifter for certain parts, for certain periods of time as well, too. I've experienced that life. But yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Like what I kind of realized the first time I came over here, that was like my first experience, like just traveling to travel almost when I first, like I just graduated university, like I'm a teacher by trade. And so I finished school in Canada and I was like, oh, like I don't really want to teach in Winnipeg right now, or maybe I will later on down the line. I want to have some other experiences. And so I went with a group of friends and we moved to Australia and we taught in Australia for a year. And we just kind of used it as an opportunity to say yes to every opportunity that came across our doorsteps. We traveled around, we taught in different cities, different places. It was just like an unreal experience. And it opened my eyes to, what I was describing with the basketball culture out here. You kind of, when you're in different places, you'll see opportunities are different compared to your home country. And if you can take advantage of both of them by being able to be mobile enough to move between them, you might notice that you have other opportunities in different countries compared to others that you've been living in, or ones that you have like laid roots down. And that's what I noticed, and that's like what kind of spurred me to sort of live this lifestyle.
So during the years that you said that you drifted and stuff, like what were some of the things that you learned from kind of being all over the place, and what eventually hit you to want to establish a more permanent presence somewhere rather than continue to be Mr. Worldwide?
So during like the COVID lockdowns, that's kind of like I did my thing in Australia here. The first time I came back to Winnipeg, actually came back to Canada for a couple of years, and COVID happened, and all the lockdowns happened, and that kind of, I had a unique experience during the lockdowns in Winnipeg compared to most people. And as soon as I could, I pretty much took off, and I was backpacking through Europe, and I have clients in Europe in various countries. And so what I did, I had my online business going a little bit. I wanted to see more of the world. Like I said, with Australia, it was the first time I had really traveled just to travel. Before that, I'd done a lot of traveling just for sports. For basketball, you're going on sports trips and everything. It's kind of like a business trip. You don't really get to just explore and embrace the culture that you're in. And so what I did is I backpacked through Europe for about 4 or 5 months, and I hit a bunch of different countries, and I was visiting a lot of the clients that I had, my online clients, and some of them I knew from Canada. They were playing overseas. Some of them I had met through other connections. Some of them I had just met on Instagram. And so I went to places like Lebanon, which was pretty unique. And I went around Europe to different places, got to visit my clients in person, but also got to connect with their teams and their, teammates and, their communities as well. And that really grew my business. And so I was doing that for a little while. And I was in Bali for about a year as well, living during the lockdowns, just because it was a unique situation there compared to most places in the world. And I always had the intention of coming back to Australia because I saw the opportunity that I had here. And, the lockdowns and everything and life in general just sort of prolonged me coming back, but that was always my intention. But I just took some time to really just explore and just embrace the nomadic lifestyle. It is a lifestyle that I, go back to. I will go back to at certain points as well, too. I have a more permanent visa and a work position here right now, but I do sort of reserve the right to, change places if I see fit. And in the future, I might be doing some more sort of moving around like that as well, too.
So have you got the opportunity to travel or explore any other countries around Australia and the Pacific, or not yet?
Yeah, no, I've been to, I spent some time in Thailand, like just on holidays, visiting and, kind of exploring around, just partying a little bit with my friends that I had here in Australia. Like I said, I lived in Bali, which is in Indonesia. It's a pretty quick flight over there. I have some plans to go to New Zealand coming up this year as well, too. So I haven't really done a ton of traveling kind of in this area. Like I've seen a lot of Australia. Australia is a massive country. There's tons to see here, and there's lots of different types of landscapes. So a lot of it has just been like domestic travel around Australia the last little while.
So I want to turn the clock back a little bit. You've been building Alliance Athletics, and you've taught a lot of people and built a program that has seemed to work wonders for a lot of clients. What was it that made you want to start that business? What experience really was the launch pad for bringing Alliance Athletics into existence?
Yeah, there was a couple things. So I always had a passion for training, right? So I used to do vertical jump training for basketball players, volleyball players, track athletes, that kind of stuff. And I sort of paid my way through school doing that. And so I actually started back, I was probably only 19 when I started coaching people. Like I always had the passion for training and kind of like bettering your physical attributes, like building your character kind of, right? Is something that I've said to people as well, like upgrading your character, getting more athletic, jumping higher. I was a small overlooked basketball player, so I got the passion for training because I had to. Like I had to train myself. I wasn't making provincial teams or getting these, these sort of, club, AAU, whatever opportunities where you're sort of put into a system where you're designed to, or you're put into a system that's designed to sort of put you on a path to becoming a pro. I didn't have any of that. So I had to learn how to train myself. And that sort of spurred the passion in me of helping others do the same. And then I had great success improving my own athletic ability, but it came with aches, pains, injuries, recurring pain, recurring nagging injuries over time. And it really just made me realize that I was in the stage where I kind of thought I knew a lot, but I didn't even really know how much I didn't know at that time about how to actually take care of the body. And so I sort of took a step back from the in-person coaching when I graduated school. And that's when I came over here to Australia the first time. And so I stepped away from training clients in person. And I was going through this transition phase where I had just met a mentor of mine who sort of changed my perspective on training, at least in some capacity. And it put me on a different trajectory in terms of like how I do things with training clients and how I go about training myself. And that person I met was Ben Patrick. As a lot of people know him as knees over toes guy. He's one of the most influential and well-known online coaches. He was just on Joe Rogan earlier this year or last year. And I met him and he changed my perspective. And so I started working on my body. I started becoming more supple, more flexible, more mobile. At this point I was in my mid-20s and I felt like an old man moving around. And, it really just helped reverse all of that and make me feel better just holistically as an athlete, just, feel better about not getting injured, not being in pain all the time. And at that time I was overseas. So I saw him doing the online coaching thing and he really mentored me. And, we were on the phone all the time. I was soaking up a lot of information from him and it really spurred me to start my own online coaching business as well too. And I had clients from back home in Canada that were saying, hey, we still want to work with you while you're away. And so I started doing like the Google Docs spreadsheets and stuff like that and, sending out programs and stuff and just sort of experimenting. And when I came back to Canada, I had a lot of time on my hands. I wasn't employed and I had some time to sort of just chill out and think and build something. And I spent a bunch of time, about 6-7 months, filming videos, putting together the whole framework, the philosophy. And then I eventually launched the Alliance Athletics, the online coaching business, what it is now. That was about 3.5 years ago.
Why do so many people feel resistance to, like, especially when it comes to training? I feel like there's a lot of resistance to the whole concept of the proper way to squat and your form when you're benching and when you lift certain weights, or people are so focused on trying to look jacked versus actually focusing on mobility or not stretching. Like, why do those mindsets exist, at least from the experience that you've had with building Alliance and working with Ben?
Yeah, so that's a great question, man. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of factors, obviously, and a lot of it is just kind of like, you could say laziness, but you could also, I would say a better term is like just people being distracted. People are kind of scrolling on Instagram, scrolling through social media, they just kind of see something and they want it, right? They don't really understand everything that has to go into. They just want the quick fix is essentially what I'm getting at. And I think that there's a problem in the culture of fitness where we have modern day lifestyle that's sedentary. And at the same time, we have things like social media where the grind, the push through pain, no pain, no gain, like whatever bullshit slogan you want to say, is mixed with the sedentary lifestyle that we have nowadays. And so people sit on their ass for, 14, 16 hours a day usually, and then they go to the gym and they just destroy their body. They just break their body down, and they think they want to feel like they're doing something, and so they crave the feeling of being sore, being exhausted. A lot of people think that just being sweaty at the end of a workout workout means it's an effective workout. So it's just a lack of knowledge and distraction, because there's so much information coming at you nowadays that I don't really think it's a problem of information, but it's a problem of being able to actually discern which information is good and which is bad, and or which is applicable to each person's scenario or situation. And I got a funny story actually to kind of just illustrate that. Like, I was with a friend of mine who was visiting from Canada and Australia, and we were walking around, and he was kind of just like picking my brain on some questions like this, like just the Alliance philosophy, and how I go about training myself. And because I tell a lot of people I work out less than most people. Like, I'm not in the gym all the time. It's really a lifestyle for me, right? And so I was kind of explaining this, and eventually I could tell he wasn't really grasping it. And eventually he kind of looked at me and he was like, so like, do you only train for function? Like, you don't care about like aesthetics at all? And I looked at him and I was just like, it kind of just came out of my mouth, and I was like, well, do I look like I don't care about aesthetics at all? And it was just like a hilarious moment, because people think it's like one or the other, right? But you can really have both, and one can feed into the other. For example, if you feel better, like if you walk in the gym or you walk on the court or whatever physical activity you want to do, and you just feel great, and then you wake up the next morning and you also feel great, you don't have any soreness. Like right now I can play basketball. I just came from a tournament tonight, and I can play day after day after day on concrete, and it doesn't faze me. It doesn't hurt my body. I feel great the next day. So I'm not like negatively reinforced to not do it again. Like, I crave it, and I'll just keep doing that. And so taking care of your body allows you to like become almost addicted to it and become even more passionate about it, because it feels good. And conversely, most people, they go to the gym and they have a sore back the next day and they can't get out of bed, and they're like, oh man, like I played basketball the night before, and they're just like wrecked the next day. And I wouldn't want to play sports or be active either if that's how my body felt.
Man, it's such a crazy phenomenon, like the contradiction in the fitness world, where people are like, oh yeah, man, like no pain, no gain, or if you didn't sweat, like get your ass back in there and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but what kind of negative effects do injury and continuous injury have on people's willingness to work out? It's already hard enough for people to be motivated to go to the gym, let alone if they experience injury, then that's like the number one excuse is to, oh, take it easy. And then you just get back in that cycle of being sedentary. And then I've seen it like from being, I'm grateful to have interacted with other trainers or people in Winnipeg who actually do carry the mindset that you have. I know there's not as many of them maybe as there should be, but they talk about, look at what happens. People think, oh, I feel like I'm 40 years old and I'm 20, or I feel like I'm 60 years old and I'm 40. It's like, well, why is that? Like, have you ever never stopped to ask that question rather than just assume you should always feel 20 years older than your actual age?
Facts. I think it's like kind of starting to change though. Like, we are in the information age now. And like I said, I think a lot of people just get bombarded with a lot of things, so it's hard to discern what is applicable knowledge for them. But we are moving in the right direction in some ways. In some ways, we aren't, in my opinion. But generally, I think people are starting to wake up to more functional training methods, and you see that a lot. It's kind of a buzzword nowadays, like functional training, right? And I think over time, we are moving in the right direction with that. But I don't really blame people, because, the medical industry is steering people in the wrong direction in a lot of cases as well too. Like I can't tell you how many times I've worked with someone who has like a ruptured patellar tendon, like the tendon on the front of their knee, or their Achilles tendon, ACL, whatever the case may be, back pain. And they're living in fear because their doctor or their therapist has told them that they need to avoid certain positions, or they need to take it easy, or they shouldn't be doing this, or they shouldn't be doing that. And it's kind of like this oversight where people just get told to rest it. when that actually has been scientifically proven to, make you weaker over time, right? And it's a quick way that I think a lot of times it's easier to tell somebody that if you're not there coaching them all the time and you're just giving them advice, just saying, oh, just rest it, is ensuring that they don't have a big major re-injury, right? So I kind of understand why that's the case, but it does steer people in the wrong direction. And so people think it's normal to have pain, and people think it's normal to just like, oh, I just can't do that. Like I have to like avoid that. I can't play basketball anymore. I'm like 40 now. Like I can't really do that anymore. I can't push my body. And it's sad, honestly, in my opinion.
Man, I know that he was the first guest here on this podcast for a very specific reason. And I know that he's someone that you've worked with just a little bit, and I was talking with Darcy about this mindset where people say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it's like, you can, but you just have to understand the cost that comes with doing that. Like, yes, you can, use the squat rack and bench press when you're 40 or 50, but there's a different cost to that than when you learn how to do it when you're 20. Or, I see guys in the gym when I go back to visit Winnipeg right now. I work out at the Y, and I see a lot of young kids who are like getting after it and they want to get huge. And I'm like, you know what? I love seeing guys active in the gym, and I enjoy the fact that people want to move their body. But at the same time, sometimes I see guys who are like, they're jerking their neck up when they're on bench, or they're doing something else, or they're jerking and rocking, and they're not doing like curls right. And I'm just like, man, like you're setting yourself up to be injured. And it's obviously a hard conversation because you're like, I don't want to seem like that dick in the gym. But at the same time, you're like, yo, like they have the right idea, but if they don't know how to do it properly, like you're going to end up being one of those people that says, and when you're 40, I can't work out anymore. That's not for me.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like I have that experience a lot. And like you have to, in some ways, exercise restraint. Sometimes you can't just tell people, it's not going to be received well if you just walk up to people and tell them they're doing something wrong. And from my perspective, like, I've gone deep down the rabbit hole of human performance and human health. And so, I can just like look at people and I can see by their facial structure, how they breathe and how they like, what their sleep is probably like, and how physically able they are, all that kind of stuff. And you can't unsee those things. And so that's like a constant thing on my mind, is you see people and it's just like a slow moving train that's going to wreck itself in a lot of cases. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people, you have to have kind of like that rock bottom moment, where you have that you get forced to change your perspective because you get smacked in the face with like a major injury or something like that, or like a major setback where you have to change and you can't just keep enabling yourself. So I think a lot of it is just like taking ownership of your situation too. Like I know Darcy's talked a lot about this, and when we worked together, that was one of the things. Like he was a little bit further along in that process than a lot of other people, but it really is just about taking ownership and being real with yourself and sticking to a plan and executing it, and then eventually it becomes a lifestyle. You start to enjoy it. It becomes less of a punishment and less of a necessity, and it's more of an enjoyable experience.
One thing that I've seen you and Darcy as well do, or just I think it's just Alliance philosophy in general, that always inspires me, and I'm actually really curious about, is like this mindset of lifestyle where people are like, you elevate from, I need to be in the gym and lifting weights in order to feel strong and be functional, to you can work out and you can build your body anywhere with limited equipment, and that is not a restriction. And I am not at the point yet where I have the knowledge of how to do that. But when I was actually traveling in Fiji, I was like, okay, obviously, like, maybe there's limited gyms, or when you're in other parts of the world where you enjoy traveling and seeing the culture, but at the same time, you don't want to feel scared of, whoa, now if I go here, then I can't eat well, or I can't work out as well as I need to. So how do you find that balance? So how did you develop that philosophy to kind of break out of that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just me uprooting myself and being in a different environment. Like you said, when you went to Fiji, you had that realization, um, that you could do it or you couldn't do it, or it was different, whatever. With me, it was a lot the same. Like just uprooting myself. I was going to new places all the time. When I was here living in Australia the first time around, and I was bouncing around, and I realized like you can't just they keep doing drop-ins at the gym all the time. You don't have time. You're moving around. It's expensive. Like it's not practical. You just have to be able to make do with what's around you, right? And so I was very much the same. I kind of got like forced to change my perspective, I guess. And then I just embraced it because I realized how empowering it is. Like not having any restriction or requirements. Like if you like when with me, like I know, and anyone who works with me knows, anywhere you go, regardless if you have a gym, regardless if you have, you know, the grocery store that you want or whatever, like all those different amenities that you have back home, you don't need any of it. Like you understand the principles and you understand the fundamentals so that you can adapt on the fly. And so you can get a workout in on the beach with nothing more than like some rocks and coconuts that you found on the beach. Like that's what I did in Bali for like 9 months. This is like I had a pull-up bar and I found like some rocks and sticks and stuff like that. Like that's pretty much all I used to work out. And I had great progress. Like I actually, it's not like I just got all like skinny and flexible or something either. Like I gained weight there, I built muscle. You can do that anywhere. But a lot of times people need the gym because they're investing into it. They just have to get out of their environment. They have to go to the gym because they know that when they go to the gym, they will work out. And so I don't have a great answer for like how to develop that mindset where you don't necessarily need um, the gym, I guess, to hold you accountable. But in my opinion, it's just such an empowering experience and lifestyle to be able to do that from anywhere. And you start to enjoy it. Like when I go to new places, like most people when they go to on holidays, they're just like wrecking their body. Like they're ignoring everything, all their goals, everything. And for me, it's like I go to new places and I enjoy, going and hunting down a space where I can get a workout in, or I go to like a nice scenic location, or I just go on a hike or something and I get a workout in there, or whatever the case might be, I'm in a different scenario, a different situation. And I just enjoy that going and finding a spot where I can get my workout in each day.
Yeah, man, that's such a huge thing. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the pod today was because I know like that mindset is so powerful. Like seeing all the places you've been and knowing how much I enjoy to travel and it's almost like setting yourself free. I know that like your tag on Instagram is red pill performance, but it literally is like taking the red pill. Like once you take it, like you can't unsee it. You go down the rabbit hole and realize, wow, I could be in the middle of like, and you're in the Pacific, like you could be in countries where there is no gym, like that doesn't exist, or the food options are way more limited. You don't have your plant-based, coconut milk available for you and your Starbucks latte and all these, and all the trimmings. But when you're able to actually make do with even what seems like the most restrictive environments, then it shows that there's no excuse. You just have to be willing to put in the work and be dedicated to building it as a lifestyle. It doesn't just snap and happen overnight. And like you said, you can't really teach a mindset. It takes being smacked in the face or experiencing it for yourself before you can actually buy into it and be like, okay, you know what? You're right. Steak, eggs, and guac exists in every country, or avocados exist in a lot of countries. All right. So there's no
Yes.
excuses to why I can't just eat the same thing every day
Yes.
and realize it's fuel for my body. And I don't need to go to Domino's. I don't need to go and eat junk food just to feel good,
Oh man, 100%. And like steak, eggs, and guac, man. Like I eat that 5, 6 days a week, man. Like all
All
the time.
reliable,
And
all reliable.
yeah, yeah. And it's like it's kind of a thing too, where like you mentioned it. If you simplify yourself, and like Darcy talked about on your last episode, I watched it. It was great. Talked a lot about minimalism. Like in a sense, a lot of it comes from minimalism. Like if you're uncomfortable, you are okay putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations, or you're okay having less, or you're okay like not having all of these conveniences. It sets you free. Like I truly believe that, because like, for example, if you're traveling and it's like, oh man, I need to be on a resort. I need to have like these drinks I want, and I need to be on like this beach with like this view. And, I can't be taking public transit in a different country. That's crazy. And, I need to have my food, and I need to have my take, whatever it is. I have to go to a gym. I can't work out just anywhere. Think about how much more expensive that is compared to if you're like, you know what, I can just find a local accommodation that's in a convenient spot that's pretty affordable and it's cheap, and I can eat at local places. I don't need to like go to restaurants. I can cook for myself with very minimalist things. I just need a pan and some butter. Like it sets you free. You're able to like go to more places because you're not spending so much money every time, and you can have more freedom and time on your hands because you're not spending so much money or time doing all of these like touristy things, and you end up having a better experience anyways, right? And like I think one thing that happened with me, I got another funny story. Like when I was in Canada, like I had a car and it got stolen during COVID times, like during the lockdowns, because it was like, in Winnipeg, it was becoming, in certain places of the city, it was like I was living in the inner city in a apartment, and it was like in some ways it was almost like anarchy. Like it was crazy. Like there was like when my car got stolen, it just got picked up by a flatbed truck with no license plates, and they just cubed it and took off with it. Like they brought it to like a scrapyard, probably, the police said, and they scrapped it and took money from it and sold the engine. And they said there's hundreds of cars that are getting stolen all over the city like that all the time. And that made me realize, I was like, oh man, I don't really need a car. Like I'll just bike, it's fine. And it's Darcy talks about a lot of this as well. Like it made me realize I don't really need that. And then that also set me free. I don't need to go to a new location. Like when I came to Australia and buy a car, like I didn't need to. Just use the public transit, use a bike. Eventually, my work situation lined me up with one, so now I have one. But I didn't have to go out and buy it. And so it's like when you can live below your means, or you can live more minimalistic, it opens up so many more doors because you have more freedom, you have more flexibility, financially, time wise, everything.
Yeah, I really want to quote him on this one because he was like, he's like, like the 20-year-olds, they want to get a car, but like as you get older, you realize it's like, I don't need a car. Like I must, it's imperative to my existence because yeah, like in certain situations, of course, time is valuable. So if a car helps you save way more time, then 100%. But the misconception is where you feel like it's absolutely necessary to survive. Like look at, man, like when I went to Portugal, like the cost of living there is similar to living in Winnipeg, which is like, that's not bad. It's not the absolute cheapest, it's not like Vietnam or something, but most people there make like, €4 an hour. So yeah, then the cost of living is super expensive and owning a car is impossible. But somehow people survive there, like walking or taking the bus or biking or hitching rides, whatever. And I know each country is
100%.
different and not everyone's always as comfortable with certain things, but like if you really need a car, gun to your head, like you can rent a car. Like there's always a way to get it if you need, but like, yeah, man, I don't know what level of minimalism school you're at with Darcy, but definitely past grade 1 for sure. But like, it's such a key mindset. Like it's a true inspiration to me. Like I always try to minimalize as much as possible.
Yeah. Like I watch a lot of like Alex Hormozi's social media, and that guy, man, it's like every post is gold. Like every post is gold that he puts out. It's unbelievable. And one of the things he talked about was minimalism. And he's like, and this was so true. Like it rang so true in my head when I heard it the first time. Like he says every time you walk by and you have all these things, right, laying around your house or whatever, like around your apartment, and every one of them has a memory, and every one of them like has to be put in the right place, or you're thinking about, oh, I got to move that over there. Or it's like it's laying out, or I used to, I have to do something with that. I got to put that away, or like I have to give that to whoever back because it's at my place now. Whatever. There's all these things and all these memories, and you're just like, it's like more bandwidth is getting taken from you, right? Like you see it every time, and you're thinking, oh, that memory, right, or that experience. And when you have less things, it's like less bandwidth gets like you free up bandwidth for yourself. And I'm definitely, I don't know if I'm as hardcore of a minimalist as Darcy, but I mean, I've traveled all the way across the world and lived in places for 2, 3 months at a time with no carry-on. So I'm definitely up there as well. And it's a freeing experience, man. Like it really is. And I just always think about it like, how crazy is it when I think back to when I was 19, 20 years old, and I had a car and I had a gym membership and I was going to university and everything else. And I remember there was so many days where I was thinking as I'm driving in the car, I'm driving my car to this job so that I can pay for my car and I'm incurring more costs. And I'm also driving in my car to the gym so that I can exercise when I could walk and I could get that exercise that way. You know what I mean? Like it was just, I saw so many things with my life like that where I was living like out of alignment for how I was actually thinking. And nowadays, like I just live way more in alignment, I think, with how I view the world, I guess.
Yeah, man, that's a big one. Like that's one that I've even felt stuck on too, where you debate like, okay, I'm going back to Winnipeg. Like, where do you live so you can live as close to the gym as possible? Because like, oh man, this the concept of like time and it being your most powerful asset. Like people will hold on to money for their dear life, but time they'll blow by, they'll waste, it's whatever. And not that I didn't know about this before, but like one of the books I've been listening to recently is called Some Days a Day, where the author, like he just gives you extreme bars over like people hold on to hours, but they waste minutes. Like they'll spend 25 minutes doing something every day, just a waste. But they're like, hey, I can't spend an hour doing it, but 58 minutes, no worry. 47 minutes, all good. And you think about that life you're living where you spend, how much time does it take to go from your house to the gym, work out, exercise, and come back? Here, I can walk to the gym in 15 minutes. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever want to spend more time getting to and from the gym ever again, because it takes up so much time that you could be using to walk or exercise or something else. And I know it's very difficult for each person's individual circumstances, but it's just something important to think about.
100%. A lot of it is like you just have to kind of be okay with it. Like you have to, you know, um, be okay with not always having all the conveniences, because it does set you free as soon as you can do that. Because most people are not willing to do that. Most people don't want to get on the bus, wait for it, whatever, ride a bike, or, whatever, right? They want to have all the conveniences all the time. And they also neglect certain things like their health or whatever. They're in this like feedback loop of negative, like, eating poorly or whatever it is. And it's like, if you like dedicate yourself, like you live a healthy lifestyle, you actually extend out the time that you can work or you can live, right? Like when I feel great, when I eat great and I exercise and everything else, and I'm living in alignment, I have more energy to work more, which means like I don't have to rush as much. Like I can be a little bit more liberal with my time, because I know, you know what, I'm going to outlast other people because I'm going to be healthier long term. I'm not going to have to go and get a hip replacement when I'm 40 and, go through an extensive rehab process because I didn't take care of my body and I didn't give my body what it needs, or I have poor sleep and poor energy all the time, so I'm not able to actually like do the things I need to do. It's like when you start living in alignment, you can be a bit more liberal. Like you don't have to be on the same timeline as everybody else. Like I always kind of think about this too. Like when I go to a new place, most people, they're like FOMO. Like they need to do everything. They need to do a million things at once, and they're on this like tight schedule. And I'm like, man, there is no way I can do that ever. I am not that type of person whatsoever. Like when I go to a place, like I'll stay there 3, 4 weeks instead of one, take my time and chill out and like actually live more like a local when I'm there and get like more of an authentic experience. And that is so much more fulfilling to me. And the reason I can do that is because I'm like, you know what, if I do the things I need to do, and I can live this lifestyle for as long as I want to. So I don't have to rush. I don't have to like, oh man, like this is my vacation this year. I got to get every ounce of fun possible out of it. It's like, you know what, if I want to sleep in because I'm tired today, I'm going to do that. Like, whatever, right? So I think when you start living in alignment, you start like taking care of, like, you start really aligning your priorities with how you want to live, then things might move a little bit smoother. Like you might have a little bit less resistance. That's been my experience.
Yeah, man. The taking your to the slow travel is just, it's so key. It's so key. Like I've done it a few times where like you're in and out in a week and you're trying to like do everything possible because of like the classic 9 to 5 life of people like, oh man, I only get 3 weeks of vacation this year. So I really gotta, well, 2 weeks can be here and 1 week there and 2 days here. And we got to do this. And then it's back to just feeling like you're exhausted and you got hit by a bus for the next 10 months until you can go back on vacation. You feel rejuvenated. And I think it was actually Darcy who said, I don't know if it was in his story or one time it was like, if you go on vacation and all of a sudden your depression goes away, you're not depressed. Your life just sucks. And I was like, man, that's a hard pill for people to swallow. That's a hard pill to
Yeah.
swallow.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. And it's like, because you start realizing that when you go to a place, like there's times where I'm in a place for a week. Like for example, in February or March or whatever, I was in Amsterdam for like 10 days or something like that. And I ended up extending it a little bit longer. So I guess I was there for about 20 days or something. I don't know, but I was supposed to only be there for like a couple of weeks. Whatever. The point is like I don't feel the need to go out and try and do everything at once because I know I'm going to be back there again. Because if I know if I do the things I have to do, I can live like this. I can take holidays or I can like have control of my time. So I'm less on this like rat race trying to do everything and like check every little box on my vacation. So yeah, like that can probably sound conceited to a lot of people that are like listening to that when they're like, you know what, I have my job and everything else. And Darcy said this too, you can do it, right? When people say, oh, it must be nice or whatever. And it's like, this type of lifestyle comes with a lot of not drawbacks, but like a lot more resistance than people realize as well too. Like there's been times where you're like stuck in transit because flights get canceled and you're like essentially homeless in an airport and you have to figure it out and whatever, or you're staying in youth hostels and there's crazy experiences that come with that. Like there's it's not all just sunshine and rainbows, but if you can give up some of those luxuries, you can be a little bit slower on your travel and you can actually enjoy it a bit more and you can have a bit more of an authentic experience.
Yeah, man. Everything has a cost, right? Like you can, if you travel a bunch, then there's usually going to be like delays or things that come up, and that's the cost of yeah, like being just doing that. Or if it's you don't get to see your family and friends as much, right? Like your parents don't live in Australia. It's not like you have if you have siblings, they live there. Or for some people, if they're not married or if they want to be married and they want to have a relationship, then it's like, hey, like if you're going to establish residence somewhere else, then maybe that's a different conversation. But if you're moving around all the time, then it's kind of difficult to really find success in that wheelhouse. But if that's not what you're looking for, or you're willing to give that up, then hey, that's okay, right? Like, but if you have like for people who want to be, they have a family and they want to buy a house and all that stuff, then things become a bit more difficult. Or if you want to travel everywhere with 6 pairs of shoes, then it's not going to be fun, right?
Well, I would just say too, like you have to be okay not getting it all at once as well too, right? By some metrics, like some people they might look at me and say, "Oh man, you travel to a bunch of different places, you live nomadically when you feel like it. You can take any job that comes to you, any place, whatever. It must be really nice." That's might be seen as a successful person, but also the person who got a job and got a house and, you know, kind of accelerated in that direction might also be seen as successful too, right? So, and I want to have some of those things too at some point, right? And I plan to, but you just have to be okay being on a little bit of a different timeline. Like you said, it comes with a cost, right? So, I guess I'm just, and I think that's also the other thing, you know, if you take care of your health, if you live authentically to how you want to, you'll be in a position eventually to do that, and you'll be okay that it maybe took a couple extra years because you lived a life that you actually enjoyed, right, along the way. So that's something that I always keep in mind as well. Like I it's easy to get caught up in seeing other people go, I'm 30 now, right? Well, I have friends that are buying houses and everything else, right? I could look at that and I could be like, oh man, you know, like I'm behind, right? Um, but the way that I view it is leveling up your character, right? Becoming someone who has more earning potential, has more freedom, eventually will pay big dividends so that I can continue to live how I want to. And I'll get those things, but I might just have to take a little bit more time to get there, right?
Yeah, like you talked about travel, like you're taking the scenic route and you're still going to get there. It just might take a bit longer, but if what you're doing gives you more time, then are you not getting the same time as the other person who's sprinting to the finish?
Yeah. Or, you know, going through great lengths to have some level of experience traveling or whatever on their holidays, right? Like that's the thing that scares me. I would never want to be in a position where I'm living for holidays or I'm living for weekends. Like I knew that pretty early on. I had some experiences younger and growing up that sort of made me realize that I just didn't want to live that way. And you know, that kind of motivates me as well too. You know, just making sure I'm living the way I want to. I'm not sacrificing my freedoms or sacrificing my lifestyle just to cash a paycheck in or just to, you know, get a little bit ahead in this way or that way.
Yeah, man, that's a whole other rabbit hole of like the living for the weekend or and even just at my old job, like I saw it around me, right? Because like people were like, man, they see someone who like works remotely and they can like go to Mexico when they want, or they can go to Belize and they're like, oh man, like this person and blah, 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 and whatever. And it's like, well, you can do that. You just choose not to. You choose the consistency and the comfort of having a paycheck every 2 weeks over having the freedom to be where you like, which again, there's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on what you want. If you're not really not happy with where you're at, then you can change it. But again, it's the golden handcuffs of life. Most people aren't willing to change it because that's scary or it's uncomfortable. And most people, I mean, we're creatures of habit and comfort, right? So there's always some small degree of comfort that you want in life. But how much are you willing to give up or how much do you feel you need? That's up to you.
Oh, 100%, man. And like, cause I have a job right now, you know, like I have a regular paycheck as well, right? But I choose to do it, right? So that's the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Like sometimes you got to punch the clock. Like, I always say that too. But when you choose to do it, or it's a great opportunity for you to advance yourself professionally as well, or it's in really great alignment with everything else that you want to do, it becomes a lot easier to do it. Like to give up a little bit of freedom. You know, I can't just get up and leave tomorrow. I'm okay with doing that from time to time when it's the right situation, right? But a lot of people are just taking the first thing that comes to them, right? And so I think like that's one of the messages that I like to tell people, you know, younger people around me, or you know, even just like my younger siblings. It's like if you level up your character and you focus on advancing yourself, then you know you're not just like taking the first opportunity that comes to you all the time. You might find something much better, right? And for me, like being in different places or traveling a lot, or you know, gaining an extensive network, for example, has allowed me to cash in on opportunities that I would have never had if I just like stayed in Winnipeg. Like imagine if your pool of potential employment or earning money or opportunities is relegated to one city versus 30 or 40. Like if you have way more people that you can call on or that can refer you to an opportunity, well, eventually eventually that's going to cash in over time, right? And you hit the nail on the head. A lot of it just comes being comfortable, being a little bit uncomfortable. And for me, like I'm kind of like, sometimes I can be a little bit reckless, maybe, like, so like I enjoy the uncomfortable experiences in some ways. Like I found myself when I was back in Winnipeg again, just living comfortably and living easy, I started just losing things and leaving things behind and being careless because I'm too comfortable. But I find like when I'm on the road and I'm like, even simple, like I have one pen in my backpack. I can't just like leave a pen behind when I go and sign something or write with it, right? Or leave it in a coffee shop or something. Like I have one pen in my backpack. So I'm like not losing a single thing when I'm abroad because I'm kind of uncomfortable and I don't have the luxury of being careless. And that was one of the reasons why I love to travel and I love to like see new places, because it puts you in this uncomfortable position in some ways. And if you can get like, eventually you become comfortable and you enjoy it because you get good at it, right? Your character is leveled up to the point where you're super adaptable and you can just handle it. But it wasn't always the case. I was making mistakes at the beginning all the time, but it just allows you to then travel lighter, travel easier, all that kind of stuff as well. And live in more uncomfortable scenarios that maybe can pay off or maybe are whatever more enjoyable for you.
There is one last kind of little mini subject I wanted to ask you about before we wrapped up for today. I know you posted a lot about it on your story. We mentioned the steak, eggs, and guac earlier. How has your perspective changed around like the food that you eat over time? Because I know obviously moving your body is one thing, but then what you put in your body, as what most people don't realize, is actually 80% of the battle.
Yeah. And I think some people will see how I eat or the things I do as extreme or weird. And I'm okay with it. Like I walk around in shoes that look like duck feet, wide-toed shoes and flat-soled shoes and stuff because it gives me an edge, and I enjoy having healthy feet. So I'm very much the same with my food. Like I eat very simple. Like so I eat a lot of just like steak, eggs, my I say I'm a nutrivore. I heard somebody say that and I was like, I'm taking that because I eat the most nutritious foods that I possibly can. And I don't eat like processed foods. From time to time, once in a while, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna get takeout once every few weeks or something like that. Whatever, it's fine. I'm not like that crazy. But all the times outside of that, I'm cooking by myself. I'm cooking my own meals and stuff. And so I'm pretty meticulous with what I put in my body. Like I do funny things as well. Like I ingest baking soda pretty regularly as well because it gives you benefits in terms of like your oxygen uptake and lactic acid buildup and just feeling better and healthier in general. And it keeps your water bottles clean. So that's a little life hack. Instead of washing your water bottles with soap and having like a soapy taste in your water after, you just put a teaspoon of baking soda in there and it keeps it clean and it's good for you. So I do kind of weird things like that. So I have a lot of little hacks, like I eat liver and stuff like that as well. I don't really eat vegetables. I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of red meats, sometimes raw. So I'm a little bit different in that regard, but I'm okay with it. It elicits great results in a lot of ways. Like for example, I don't use sunscreen either. So I don't, even in the desert in Australia, I haven't used sunscreen once in the 2 months I've been here. I haven't gotten sunburnt. I've had once or twice where I've had a little bit of redness on my cheeks or whatever, but the foods you eat impact you in ways that a lot of people just don't understand. Like the foods you eat, the things you cook with, right? People are using cooking oils and stuff like that. All that stuff has an impact. And what I found is as I started cleaning up my diet, using natural soaps, eating more sort of natural foods, all of a sudden, oh, I don't have to use moisturizer ever. My lips don't get chapped. I don't get dry skin. I don't get sunburns. I don't have any of those problems that I used to have. I don't have achy joints, none of that stuff. I don't have inflammation. So there's a lot of benefits to, just eating and living more naturally, I guess. So that's kind of what I really focus on, is just simplistic and natural foods and products that I use.
Yeah, man. Avoiding seed oils like the plague is like That's the number one commandment of eating healthy, like the number one. And then the next one is number 10, because that's how it's, I mean, we could literally do an entire podcast
Crazy.
episode about why you should avoid seed oils, but just it, inflammation, like it's literally an industrial lubricant. Like when I was in Fiji, and if you ever get to travel around the Pacific Islands, you will see the crazy negative effects of it, because most people there are either in amazing shape and they're the rugby players that are super jacked, or they're just like balloons, like they're huge. Because why? All they cook with is soybean oil, everything. And if you look at the smaller nations, like I know that specifically, I met kids who were from there, actually, kids who moved from Nauru. They were like neighbors at our Airbnb. And it's a country I've always been curious about for a long time, ever since I was in elementary school. And one of the things I've learned from doing research on it is it went from being like one of the richest countries in the world to being one of the poorest, because the fact that they lost all their resources, and they went from eating natural diet like coconuts and meat and fish. And then all of a sudden, when they start to get too big for their boots and spent all their money, and then the phosphate was gone, and it was immediately just like a desolate wasteland. All their food is processed. All comes in cans from Australia and New Zealand. And industrial lubricants are all the things they use to make like turkey neck and other like, or turkey tail. That's what it was. Like just things that aren't even meat. Like just like you'd rather eat Lunchables than this. Like that's how bad it is, you know? And like, it's again, your body's I saw this somewhere last week. It was like, you can always buy a new car. You can always buy a new phone. You can always buy a new laptop, whatever. There's all these things you can upgrade, but you only get one body. Treat it as such.
Facts, man. Absolutely. I'm curious as to what led you to the avoidance of seed oils. Because the crazy thing is, man, is it's like it's such a crazy thing that that people ingest those all the time, and I did it as well. Like it wasn't until pretty recently that I really got tuned into this, and I just changed my whole perspective immediately, because it makes you start looking into other things and being like, oh, like, you know, what about that thing and that thing, and, you know, what about that? And it's crazy because it's such a major health, like negative. There's so many negative health effects of it, negative health effects of it, but it's not common knowledge, and nowhere is it taught. Like there's no like billboards like or cigarettes like where it says like, oh, like this will kill you, and you'll just see cooking oils there's an entire aisle of them in most grocery stores. It's crazy. So I'm curious, like, what made you realize that, and where'd you look that up?
Well, how these conversations usually start is like Nicholas and I are talking, and he's like, hey man, just I learned this thing, just don't do this, or I'm taking this supplement, take this. And I'm like, okay, like, but just because Nicholas and I have such a high level of trust with each other that like, I'll just take his word for it. Like if he's like, it can be something as simple as like, and he's not always right. For example, he's like, hey man, you should try Adam's peanut butter. It's the best. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it. I'll try it. And I tried it. I was like, you know what? I like the what's it called? I was like, the peanuts only and sea salt one from Kraft. I prefer that one. But hey, Adam's was still okay. The ingredients aren't bad. I know he's not saying you should have something that's gonna put you at major health risk, but it was just one day, like in February, he's like, man, he's like, you know, something I realized or learned recently is like, you should, he's like, don't have salad dressing. I'm like, what? Why? He's like, because it's just 90% soybean oil. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, avoid that shit like the plague, because it's like, you know, make your body inflamed and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. So immediately, like, I had like 2 salad dressings. I had this, I had that. I just took him to the fridge at work, just left him there. And hey, man, if you people want to go have them, by all means, you know, it's your prerogative. I'm not going to say that you should or you shouldn't, but I'm not going to eat this. Or even when it came to like, what was it in, I think it was even in cereals I had, like when I go to Nicholas's place in Toronto, like he'd always have Vector, just boxes and boxes and boxes of Vector cereal. And I remember getting Vector cereal and like just small boxes. And then I looked in the back, and now like I used to only just look at the macros, but then when you start like beginner is like, you look at the macros expert is like, you look at the ingredients list, you know, like that's something that changed my perspective like crazy. I was like, oh wait, sunflower oil, canola oil, like gone. And even it's just like when I go to my parents' house, for example, like I was there, like we're celebrating my dad's birthday, and my mom was like, because they see that Nicholas and I, we started working out and taking nutrition more seriously, and I'm like, there's like four loaves of bread laid out. And I'm just like pulling them up and like, I'm just like looking at the back. Mom's like, oh, are you just looking for the sugar content or you're looking for protein? I'm like, Mom, I was like, you went to school to be a dietitian, but you don't even know what to look for. Like, that's the thing that's so crazy to me. It's not like it's not even an insult to her, but it's like the limited scope of education. Like you go to university and you are probably like 5-10 years behind because what they teach you and how long it takes versus like the updated information. And so
100%.
as soon as I realized that, I was like, man, like, oh, this thing is plant-based or all natural or 0 calories. Impressive. Very nice. Now let's see the ingredient list.
Yeah, man, 100%. And like you hit something there that's so important to realize. Like, I think this stops so many people from actually jumping in and doing something is they're like, oh man, I don't have the qualifications. Like I didn't go to university for that. And I tell people this from time to time. Like I had this experience with a physiotherapist back like years ago when I was in school. Like I have I have a kinesiology undergrad, and then I went for education. It's essentially like the stepping stone to go into physiotherapy if you want to, right? But I did education instead. And I remember hitting up one of my physiotherapy friends at the time. I'm not friends with them anymore. And I was like, can you just like give me those textbooks? Like I kind of just want to like read them. And they're like, nah, like, you know, like you're not in school for it, you know, like this and that. Like it was like an actual, like I was like kind of dumbfounded by it. And I guess if I would have really pressed, I'm sure I could have gotten them, but there was like resistance to just like sharing the information. And it was just like kind of crazy to me. And also just the mindset of like, oh, I have to go and get a degree to say that I know what I'm talking about. When, like you said, the degree is what was proven 10 years ago and what can be put into textbooks. So whatever is proven now and whatever the cutting edge people on the leading edge of human performance or nutrition, what they're doing now will be in textbooks in 10 or 15 years. And so the people you should actually be learning from are the people that are out there doing it. And not to knock education, like education's great. It gives you a foundation. You can read studies, you can discern good information from bad for the most part. But it's not going to be a substitute for experience or for learning from the people that are on the cutting edge. And, you know, not to brag or anything like that, but it's like now I have I didn't go to school for physiotherapy, but I mentor physiotherapists in some cases and help them with their coaching services and help them put themselves out there and help teach them new things that are past where you would like past the stuff that you would learn in school. And it's just like it was a crazy experience the first time that really happened, you know, having someone like that reach out to me for advice when in the beginning you get looked down upon because, oh, I don't have a degree. And that's one of the reasons I don't share my bachelor of kinesiology or my bachelor of education. Like I don't have that in my Instagram bio. I don't have that on my website. I don't share that with anybody. It doesn't mean anything. People don't care. Like nobody cares if you have like this degree unless you're like actually applying for like a formal job where they're gonna like, you know, they're required to only hire people that have it. And even in those cases, sometimes you can get by without it as well too.
Yeah, man, that's again, that's another whole other topic about like, do you need school and all these things? And I even like, truth be told, you know, from when I started working out and again, through the recommendation of Nicholas, like, hey man, like this is one of my clients, like he trains people, like you should work with him, man. I was like, okay, sure. So I did. And like literally, but again, I have a very special like type of discipline and like extreme outlier of like when you do something, it's like you do it to the letter. Like once you learn something, you are just dialed in and you're not like, oh, it's all good, loosey goosey. And so I was like freakish about my nutrition and I was like freakish about everything I did in the gym. And literally in like 2.5 months, guys were like, yo, how much do you bench? And we're asking me this in the gym. Not that I've ever cared. And I haven't even tried for a 1 rep max in probably like 5 or 6 years. But just the fact that guys were like, man, you look big or blah, 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 asking me these things. I'm like, how long have you been working out? I was like, 2.5 months. And they're like, what? They're like, oh, that's a lie. I was like, I'll show you the proof, man. Like, I got all the receipts here. Like, I'm not lying to you, you know? And it has changed my perspective on like, before I was like, man, like, I love helping people. I love training or whatever, but I never took bio in high school. I graduated with rec management. Like, of the 4 degrees I could have taken, I took the one where, oh, you didn't take kin, or you didn't take anatomy, so it's too late, or you didn't go to physio, or blah, blah, blah. But one of my buddies, he literally said to me today, he's like, dude, what degree does Steve Cook have? Or what degree does Derek from, More Plates, More Dates have, or whatever? Like, I don't know. It doesn't matter, because like guys like him, Andrew Huberman is like a brilliant genius, but does anyone know what degree he has, or do they see like his credentials in his bio? Like, do they?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, who knows? I don't know. Like, because you don't care. Like, people don't care as long as you have like good information and it helps people.
Yeah, man.
That's the thing. Like, I think if you want to like I remember when you approached me for coming on to the pod, it was about getting ahead in your 20s, right? And that's one of the things I think is really important. Like, if you just like level up your character and pursue knowledge and you pursue your passion, rather than like kind of relegating yourself to like, and not to say that like university or formal education is bad. Like, I recommend that people should do it if it's a means to something that they want. Like, if you're going there because you think it's going to give you like some sort of credibility or some sort of like edge, nah, that's not what it's for. Like, it's a means to an end. Like, it's a stepping stone to put you in this position so that maybe you have a different opportunity, or you have a different perspective, or you network, who knows, right? But if you go in there with the mindset of like, oh man, like I don't really know what I'm doing, but when I finish this, I'm going to be in a better spot. Like, I don't recommend it, because you're not going to be. If I were to do it again, I wouldn't go to school. I don't think. Like, I think as with my degree, it's opened a lot of doors as well. But I wouldn't go to school in the mindset of like, oh, for me to do this, I have to do this formal education. I'm kind of butchering what I'm trying to say here, but essentially it's just like, unless you have a purpose for it, don't do it. Like, do it if you know that you need to, but if you think that you need to because it's gonna like give you more respect or something, that's not gonna happen. It's not what it's for. You can learn all that stuff online. You can find mentors. Like, when people ask me where I've gotten my perspective on training, because it's different, it's pretty unique, it's because I've sought out mentors and I've kind of got the blueprint now on how I can just download the information from another individual. Like, become a good student, like hire a coach and just go all in and become a great student, like you said. And you know this, like, they'll answer when you hire a coach. They're never going to be like, oh man, like you texted me 4 times today, I'm only going to answer one of them or whatever. Like, oh, you're taking up all my time. When you encounter a great student who's getting great results, they'll give you anything you need. They'll give you all the information you need. And so if you just become a great student, you can just like absorb all of that from that person. And then you can go on to the next person and do the same there. And you have the perspective on how to find that next person as well, because you're like, you know what, I'm missing that, or like I saw that person, I need to know that as well too. And that'll get you so much farther than like any university degree. And that's been my experience to a T.
Yeah, man. I honestly have to wholeheartedly agree. Like, everything you said there, bang on, like extreme flames. Even when I think back to like, because I studied all over the place and went to 4 institutions and did 4 separate degrees until finally collaborating on one, and then dropped out of college to get a job to move here and all these sorts of things. And when I look back, I'm like, yeah, obviously it's led me to this point, and A, I can't even reverse it if I wanted, and B, would I be in the same position if I did something else? Maybe not. But understanding the importance of school as a means to an end. Like, I know, because people say to me like, oh man, like how could you knock university? I'm like, well, I'm not knocking university entirely, because if you want to be a lawyer, like you have to go to school, or if you want to be an engineer, like you kind of have to go to school. Like, even if it's Red River, it doesn't matter. Like, you have to do some form of post-secondary. And I don't think post-secondary is bad, but like, just with anything in life, like understand the purpose of why you're doing it. You know, like I see my cousins who are like getting older and they're almost in their 20s, and it's like, why are you in school? If you want to be in school to be a teacher, okay, sure, but what kind of teacher? Or have you ever thought about teaching this or going to another place? And most of the time, like, not really, right? People's vision is like horse blinders, like they can only see what's in front of them because of the environment. You talk about like looking
100%.
who you were in Winnipeg, having a car and driving to school and driving to the gym and driving a 7-Eleven versus now. It's just like, why? Because you traveled, you expanded your horizons, and it's changed everything.
110%, man. And it's like, um, yeah, like if you kind of like think like that's what you have to do, then that's what you're gonna do, right? Um, so it's sometimes you gotta like the knowledge that you gain through the experience and through the process of seeking out that knowledge. It also allows you to just like become, you learn quicker and everything else when it's more self-directed, in my opinion, as well. Like I have some unpopular opinions maybe about education. Like I'm a teacher, so I believe I have some rights to have some of these opinions, but I've been in schools teaching and everything else, and I've seen a lot of teachers that go through teacher college, they go through university, and like you said, they have like the blinders on, like they're the racing horse blinders, and they're like, okay, I graduated from my program at high school, and I took some university courses so I can cut half a year out and I can graduate even quicker. And and then in 4 years or 3 years, they're like back at their own old high school teaching. And that was me, like literally, like I was teaching in my old high school as well. And I was doing a lot of other things, so I wasn't really like as worried about this from like with my situation. But I saw so many teachers that just like they went to high school, they went down the road to university, they graduated university, and then they're back at high school. They didn't do any coaching. They didn't like get any world experience. They didn't do any internships. Their jobs were like, you know, something completely out of their field, just like pumping gas or something, who knows, waiting tables. And then they come into the school, and now they're supposed to be respected by the students. And it's like, really, what have you done to actually become someone that people want to learn from? Like, aside from your title of teacher, what justifies you being the teacher here? Like, do you have any like cool stories? Do you have any like cool scenarios, cool perspectives, like anything like that? Who knows? Some people don't, right? And so I just never wanted to be like that. Like I think teaching in general, like this is opening up another can of worms, but my perspective is that I think education would be a lot better hands if teachers were forced to go out and get some more life experience before you were able to sign like a long-term contract. Like you had to sub for 5 or 6 years. And I think a lot of teachers then would go and teach in different countries, or maybe work in their field of their scope of education. Like if they're going to be a biology teacher, they might do some work in the field, right? And then now when they come back and they start teaching high school students or middle school students, like they have some other knowledge, they have like more passion and more perspective for their craft. And I don't think they'd have as many like issues trying to like get the students' attention and get them interested in what they're trying to teach.
Yeah, man, that's so huge. And I know even like it's kind of unfortunate because I think colleges take more of that approach, which is actually very helpful. But I feel like most of the, like, it really depends on where you go. But like for the most part, I would say there's more students than not who, by the time they show up to college, they're looking for the quickest exit. They're looking for like in and out, bang, bang. Don't spend time there. Just, I want my paper and let me GTFO. But in reality, it's like, man, like that's the area where you have people who are industry professionals. You have people who actually have experience. I know that when I was studying at college in Toronto for sports journalism, like, yeah, like there was a lot of things that I learned from people who had firsthand experience, and it was really beneficial. I'm like, man, like why couldn't my degree have been like this from the get-go? But even still, there was things like I was so dedicated to like knowing as much as I could. So I just knew which specific gaps to fill when I got there. Cause like it's 1 year. I'm like, I just need to know the gaps you help me fill the gaps and I'll just do the rest, because again, school's never going to be a silver bullet. So like, I didn't even know that you were a teacher like before this. I had no idea that like that was what you went to school for, but I can see it now because of the fact that like,
I taught for 3 years.
like, you know, even with just envisioning you walk back into the classroom or you share these stories and, hey man, when I was in Bali, or dude, we were in the Netherlands, or we were in whatever, like on Tasmania or something, like people, like I remember when I would share stories with like this to me was such an eye-opening thing. And I'm going to go back to being in Fiji because it was literally like being on another planet. I swear. So on the last night before we flew back, like I said, we were staying in it. We did it local. No resorts, no all the Australians who go to a resort and don't know that Airbnb exists in Fiji. We were doing it like the locals, renting a car, going around, and at this Airbnb.
That's the experience. That's the experience. That's so crazy. It's so crazy to me. People go to resorts. I just don't. I've been. Sorry to interrupt here.
No, I'll go.
Get right back to your story, but it's like, but I've been to like 25, whatever, 30 countries, and it's like I haven't stepped foot on one resort ever, not once, and I don't miss it. I don't. I feel like I don't get FOMO at all from that.
There was, to me, Darcy used the word crusties, but he's like the person that shows up to the country. They do the same thing that they can do back where they're from, usually Canada, like a wealthy Commonwealth country, but just with nicer weather. That's it. And maybe a different language. And I'm just like, dude, like what? If you go to the 4 Points in Canberra or the 4 Points in Winnipeg, the only difference is just like maybe the weather, or maybe like how the waiter sounds. You know, it's like, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever go to a resort. Don't treat yourself. Don't have luxury experiences. But to tie into the story, this kind of style of travel that we had led to this experience where we stayed in an Airbnb, and these, we always saw these kids who were playing. And like, when we would drive up the driveway and we go back and we see these kids who are the neighbors, they're playing around, they're kicking the soccer ball around. And my friend and I had just come back from like an all-day river tubing tour. Like we rode the river for like kilometers on end in just a little raft, and we were like super exhausted. And then I see the kids and they're like, and the ball came my way and I threw it back to them. And I asked the kids, I'm like, oh, where are you guys from? They're asking where I'm from. I was like, oh, I'm from Canada, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we're from Nauru. And all of a sudden, like my eyes was like, I was like, dude, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And they were looking at me like, what? Like, what's so special? I was like, you are literally from the smallest country in the world that is not, that's not a microstate like Monaco and Vatican City. Like,
yeah.
I was like, you are from a place that is like the third least populated, you know, smallest, like least visited in the world, like the country that the least amount of people go to. Is like, your perspective is probably so different on a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. But the funny thing was, some things they were like, we love watching the NBA. We love like LeBron and Kobe and whatever. But there was other things they had never seen. I was like, I'm from Canada. Like we have snow and we have like this and we have that. And they were like, we want to see pictures. And they were freaking out. Like I was showing them pictures of like all the Huskies, like my girlfriend's parents have, and like the country and like riding in the snow. And to them, it was just like this crazy thing they couldn't even grasp. And I was like, man, like this is such a mind-blowing experience for these kids. But for me, it's just like, whatever. But think about when you do the flip side of that. If I go and if I was teaching in a classroom or working with kids, let's say like in Winnipeg or somewhere in Canada, and they're like, I met these kids from Nauru. They're like, you met these kids from where? And I was like, yeah, these kids live in this place, like blah, blah, blah. And they visit, you know, old World War II, you know, rusty World War II planes that have crashed, or mines or bombs or whatever from the Japanese in the Second World War. Like that's their place structure. That's how they horse around. And like, and just hearing that is so weird and different, but that's what comes from exposing yourself to these different environments. It's not really just, oh, well, let's go to the Forks, or, oh, well, let's go to the Leaf. You know, I'm not knocking those experiences. They're great, but like, how can you change your perspective to really allow yourself to actually teach people something that's going to impact their lives? Not just like, okay, kids, read chapter 7 of Intro to Biology. Like, what, you don't think I can read?
Exactly.
You don't think I can go on YouTube? Like, but I digress.
100%. 100%. And like, think about it too. Like, I think if you're teaching other people, like think of, in the space that we're in, like, you're working online, whatever, you have clients, all that kind of stuff. Like you can garner way more, you can charge more for your services when you have unique perspectives and unique talents and skills and knowledge, right? So you can't tell me that, teachers are always complaining about wages, right? It's like, you can't tell me that eventually it wouldn't lead to higher wages for teachers if a lot of teachers just had more experience like this, right? And just taught in different places and brought more to the table and the standards would rise. Like, I think it would take a while, but it's going to move it in the right direction. And like, it's like, I love that story, man. Like that's what it's all about. Like, I love that kind of stuff. I love like having those experiences of just like meeting locals and just like, I love just like having locals from other places in the world, like in my phone as well. Like, when one of my goals when I'm like 40 or 45, it's like I want to be able to go to almost any country in the world and just like have a friend that I can text and be like, hey, where can we go? Where's a good spot to go? Take me out, that kind of stuff. Show you the cool spots in the city. Like have like a local guide, and then conversely, when my friends go there, I can be like, here's a number of this guy. Text him, he'll take good care of you. Like having good relationships with people. It's like that is such a such a social credit that you have that's like invaluable in my opinion. Like if you can make your friends' experiences better or people when they go to certain places better because people there and you can line them up with experiences and stuff like that. Like I just like that's what it's all about. Like I just think that'd be so cool to be a person that always just has that, that ability to just like hook people up with cool experiences. And I had like a very similar experience when I was in the Philippines to yours, where I just met a bunch of local kids and I went to this island. It's called Siargao, and it's a little surf island, maybe like 500-600 locals or something on it. And it was unbelievable. Like the Philippines, like everyone loves basketball. They just love basketball, like nothing else. And you walk around and there's like an open court on every street corner in a lot of places. And I was there with a friend of mine. Like she played high level basketball as well too. And so we would just go and just start playing at the court. Like we're walking around spraining our ankles in these like shitty sports shoes all the time. And I'm talking to these kids. I'm like, have you ever like hurt your feet or like sprained an ankle or anything? And they're like, what's that? Like, no. And it's like one of those moments where I'm like, man, like what a perspective, like these kids are just out here in the playing barefoot basketball constantly every day. And they just love to play. And they're like so interested to hear like where we were from, where we played, all this type of stuff. And I can't say that didn't have a big impact on me, walking around now in barefoot shoes and getting barefoot as much as I can.
Yeah, man, I know that there's levels to the ranks of wearing toe shoes, and you have to receive the blessing first from the dawn of toe shoes, Darcy Cos, before you can start walking on broken glass. But man, it's that again, that it just goes to show, like, you think that everything that you grew up with is like the right way and the only way. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, oh, wait, wow. These kids who already grew up playing like, or Brazil or whatever, like street soccer, and they're barefoot and they don't have shoes and whatever. It's like, oh, their feet aren't fucked up. Like
here's a great little like example of this too. Like I'm in Alice Springs right now in Australia. And, there's a ton of the kids here. A lot of them come from like low socioeconomic backgrounds and they're walking around. A lot of them don't have shoes. They're just like walking around the town barefoot. And I was in the gym running this clinic and one of the kids was there and he's like a good natural athletic kid. You can see he has like some hops. He's a little bit taller than me. Like he's getting close. He's grabbing the rim and stuff like that. And he sees me dunk the ball and he's trying to do it. And then I'm like encouraging him to do it. And the first thing he does when he's like, all right, I'm going to actually try now. I'm like, all right, let's see it. The first thing he does, takes his socks and shoes off and goes and does it barefoot. And I'm like, man, like there you go. Like this kid doesn't know anything about that training, anything, but he knows, oh man, like these shoes, I can't do this. Like if I want to actually jump, I got to take my shoes off. And it was like, I saw that and I was like, man, that's so awesome.
Must have ascended to a higher being seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything's solidified.
Oh my God. That's so funny, man. But it's true. I see guys in the gym take their shoes off or they're squatting in socks. I'm like, wow, they can do all that without having I need powerlifting shoes. Like, oh, like, why don't you just be able to do it barefoot or with your socks on, right? Like, I don't know, but
Hey, man. Yeah, that's what the foot's designed to do, man. We can go down that rabbit hole too. I can talk about that for hours.
we need to do a meetup in another country like you guys did with Nikos, where you just the steak, eggs, and guac toe shoes club that shows up and gets in the clown car
Yeah.
driving around, like literally guys who are all 6'4", like driving in a Fiat, like around, so you can go and show kids this is how you actually become a functional human being rather than just a robot who looks like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, you know?
Facts, man. Like you talking about Fiji, man. I gotta, like, that place is on my list. I can't wait to check that place out, man. It'd be great. Next time you got travel plans, man, you let me know, especially out this way.
No, I will say before we wrap, I did want to ask you a few questions to have a bit more fun, and that actually kind of ties into the first one. 3 favorite countries that you've traveled to, and then the next 3 that are on your list.
Man, that's tough. I think, okay, so 3 favorite countries.
Yeah, outside of Canada, of course.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so maybe like slightly different categories. I think, like, if I were just to go to, like, on a holiday, I think it's got to be the Philippines. The Philippines is like just it just like it's like everything that I want in a way. Like, it's just like beautiful, like unbelievable landscapes, unbelievable water. You can do unbelievable excursions, do whatever you want there. The people are unbelievable, like super nice people. I can't. I mean, even in Winnipeg, there's a massive Filipino community. Some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, right? Super family oriented, just great people. You walk around, everyone wants to feed you and stuff like that. Like, it's just unbelievable. And then obviously, like, the basketball culture, right? So Philippines is like probably one of the best places that I've just like taken a holiday to. I think a really underrated place, especially like if you're kind of more entrepreneurial, is Turkey. Turkey is it's it being in Turkey and being in other places is it makes you realize, like, if you can be in multiple places in the world, you start realizing that certain countries and certain regions have certain strengths and weaknesses. And if you can go to multiple places, you can kind of tie them together. Like, for example, you're in Australia here, it's like things are really uniform. You don't see like a lot of like different brands for like sports drinks or something like that. It's like very like uniform. There's like this sports drink and everyone drinks it. You go to Turkey and it's like you can export anything you want, and every person on the street corner does wholesaling for some product that you want to sell or something like that. Like, it's just like a gold mine for that kind of stuff, and it's also just beautiful there too. So Turkey's at the top of the list. It's like affordable too, really lots of culture there. It's like it's one of the oldest, it's in the middle of Africa, Asia, and Europe, and actually half of half of Istanbul is in Asia and half is in Europe. So you're right in the middle of like 3 continents, and so they're just export kings. They're unbelievable for it. So Turkey is also up there as well. And I think a third one, I think is I think Slovenia, or like maybe a place like Slovenia, or a place like I've been to Romania too, and places like that are just, they're in the EU and they're really beautiful and they're way cheaper because you're not using euros. And so I think if like someone wants to go to like Europe and have a great experience, instead of going to like the UK or going to like Italy or something like that, you can go to a place like Slovenia. It's right beside Italy. The culture is almost the same, at least like to a tourist. You're not really going to notice the food's the same. It looks very similar. There's canals everywhere like Venice. And you go there and everything's just like a third of the price that it would be in another European country. And so you just have a great time. So those are like probably the three ones that are my favorite. And then places that I really want to go to, New Zealand, just the unbelievable scenery. I have plans later on this year. I got a friend that's living there. So New Zealand is definitely up there. Colombia, because I've just heard great things about the culture and the food and just the lifestyle there. And yeah, I just really want to go to South America as well. I haven't been to South America. And another one, geez, that's tough. I really like I really want to go to Africa and travel and like see more of Africa, because I think it's like a place where people don't think of when they want to go traveling and seeing different places. And I have a bunch of friends in Nigeria and you know, training contacts and clients and stuff like that. So I think Nigeria is definitely up there as well too, as a place that I really want to go to. It's on my list, like for some business reasons, but also just like culturally. And I just, like I said, like going to different, there's obviously tons of different countries in Africa that are super different from one another. You know, it's probably one of the most diverse places on earth. You can even just see like the people, like, you know, like some of the tallest people and the shortest people in the world in like neighboring countries. It's like, I could just imagine that the culture and the experience there would be really amazing. So that'd be the spot as well. I think that was three, right?
Yeah.
That was three. Yeah.
If you could learn another language that you don't already speak, what would it be? Like if you could only choose one language to learn on top of however many you speak right now, and you couldn't learn any others, like for the rest of the time, just only one that you would really want, what would it be?
I think I can speak German and I can speak English. I think I mean, yeah, I don't like I'm just thinking of like some of the languages that the most people speak, because it would be like the most useful. I mean, I haven't been to South America. Probably Spanish would be one, just because you know you go to South America and actually speak, and you probably get a way better experience when you can speak the local tongue. Um, I think that's a tough one. I think I'd say Spanish, just because like there's a ton of countries where you can speak Spanish and get, and you know, it gives you a lot of benefits. Like tons of countries speak Spanish. And I don't have like, honestly, I don't have like a massive desire to speak other languages. Like I kind of would want to get better at speaking English. Like that's probably something that you haven't heard somebody say before, but I'm trying as much as I can to have less filler words in my dialogue recently, is something I've been focusing on. And so I think I just want to get better at speaking English and get better, you know, get a better grasp of different words and stuff. Because I think that a lot of people, they're only using a very small portion of the actual language, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%, man. Even when you learn another language, like you really get to understand like each person's lexicon and how vast it really is. And I know when I was learning Portuguese and I speak with my grandparents who live in Winnipeg versus like Brazilian friends, I'm like, oh wow, like this is why I feel a lot more confident speaking with them, because their lexicon is very small based on the limited education they had growing up in like the 40s and 50s, and then not really expanding it when they came to Canada and just only relying on what they knew with their people. So it's, yeah, man, like that's not a crazy, I haven't heard a lot of people say that, but it's not a crazy thing to say, because I know exactly what you're talking about with like, you know, not want to use filler
Yeah,
words,
like even
ums and uhs and blah,
yeah,
blah, blah. And
even yeah, and even if you just go back to when I was explaining why I love the Philippines, I'm just thinking about it now. I probably said unbelievable like six times, you know, like I'm sure I could think of a better way to express myself. So that's a perfect example of it. It's just, you know, yeah, less legs, less ums. It's not using the same words. I think it'd be like a really cool thing to just like put more effort into that. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably choose Spanish and maybe get a little bit better at German as well too.
yeah, man, I mean, I know there's lots of basketball things we can ask, but just go debate. Who do you take, Jordan or LeBron?
Nice. It's a great question to ask to finish off the pod. I think so. I obviously didn't really see Jordan play. Like I didn't see him play a bunch of games. I'm relying off of highlights and anecdotal evidence and just other people's opinions and everything else. I have watched like some full games of him, and the way that I have said this, because obviously you get this question a lot as a basketball player, is that I kind of look at LeBron as like um, it's like a bull versus a snake,
Mhm.
like or like a lion versus a snake. Like a lion is like way more ferocious and can do way more damage to you in a lot of different ways and take down huge animals and everything else. But one bite from a snake is just lethal and it'll kill anything on earth, kind of thing. So like Jordan's the snake and LeBron is like the lion. And I think if I were taking a team like right now, you look at like Houston is like one of the worst teams in the league. If I were to say, okay, I want Houston to be as good as possible next year, I'm taking prime LeBron over prime Jordan, and I'm putting him on that team. And they're probably going to go to like the third or fourth round, maybe the conference finals. Like who knows? Like you look at the team that LeBron took twice, the two Cleveland teams that he took to the finals, like in 2018, and then like his first run where they went to the finals. Like
2007.
those I don't think that Jordan is taking those teams to the finals. Honestly,
No.
I think they're probably going to be a really good team, but I think they're better with LeBron. But if you take like the Lakers or something, right now potentially, or you take a really good, well organized team with like a lot of good moving parts and well-rounded team, I'm taking Jordan over LeBron because he'll push them over the top. And I think if you take two equally good teams and you put them both on there, like if you take two teams that would inevitably go to like the conference finals regardless, like the Bulls were, like when they removed MJ, they almost went to the finals. I think they went to the conference finals anyways. You take
Mhm.
a team like that, and they're going to be better with Jordan. I think in a finals matchup, the team with Jordan beats LeBron because he's like more lethal. Like you can give it the ball to him and kind of just get out of his way, and he's just like an unstoppable scoring machine that has every counter in the book. But even with LeBron, like sometimes you look at him and he's a little bit stiff. Like in some cases, he doesn't have like a super consistent go-to move that he can get off a good shot every time. But he's just like can do everything, right? Like he has no weakness really. And I think with Jordan, not saying he has weaknesses either. Like obviously he's like they're 1A and 1B or whatever. But I think it's contextual. I don't think you can just say like, oh, this player is better than the other when you're looking at like the two greatest players of all time, in my opinion. I think
Mhm.
you can do that if you're looking at like a lot of other players. You can say, oh, this person is definitively better than the other. But when you're looking at like players in the top 3 or 4, like you can't just definitively say that he's better than the other person, especially when they didn't play against each other.
Yeah, 100%. That's honestly, that has to be one of the best analogies and comparisons I've seen with Jordan and LeBron. And I know a lot of people always bring up like they just look at stats and they're like, oh, well, he never lost the finals or he went to the finals more. But I'm like, well, it's
That's sorry to interrupt, man, but that is like the dumb when people say that, I just like immediately like they lose credibility for basketball arguments with me because it doesn't make any sense. It's like you're telling me that LeBron going to the finals for a decade somehow hurts him. Like you're telling me it's better to lose in the first or second round than it is in the finals.
but I
Like
know some people say, oh,
what? Like
well,
how does
he's been to the finals more, so that makes him better than Jordan because Jordan only went 6 times. Like I've seen both sides of the argument, which still is
true?
like
Yeah.
it's I don't
Also,
know, it's arbitrary. Like
yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I think when you just look at their games, like that's what I see. I just see LeBron as like this kind of like Swiss Army knife, can do everything, right? Doesn't really have a weakness, can like shoulder an entire offensive load and run an entire offense through LeBron. And you're gonna always be a competitive team. Even now, he's pushing 40. They went to like the conference finals. Like that's crazy. It's crazy. The fact that like people didn't even like people gave him respect, but it wasn't like the other thing with LeBron is I think that something that people don't say as well is that the standard for LeBron, like the expectations are so high and you can't have expectations without like that comes from responsibility. And that means that LeBron shoulders more responsibility than Jordan if he has higher expectations. Like people hold him to a higher standard than any other player on earth ever. They hold him to higher standards than people ever held Jordan. People criticize his game now as a 38-year-old. They don't say, oh man, like he was so crazy when he was younger, but like now, yeah, he's taking a step back. But it's like people give him his flowers, but I just think that he has higher expectations than any other player. And you can't just like be Skip Bayless and have just unrealistic expectations, but then also talk bad about him.
It doesn't make any sense,
like
man.
if you have crazy expectations, you must really believe that he's the best. If you have that type of expectations, right? Like,
right. That's true.
Yeah. Anyways, I could talk about this forever.
It's such an interesting breakdown because yeah, like they don't play together in the same era, and obviously the expectations came because when Jordan was great, then now it's like, oh well, now you're just gonna be forever compared to him, right? Like you're always just gonna be living in the shadow of Michael Jordan. But like at the same time, what did Jordan do when he was 38, 39, or 40 on the Wizards? Did he drag them by the bootstraps to the conference finals or the finals? I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Like LeBron is that guy. Like, yeah, maybe he won't push him over the edge, but throw him on any team in the NBA, he's dragging them by the bootstraps to the finals. Jordan, I don't think could have done that. He needed some level of help. Not to say like, oh, he was reliant on everybody, but like he couldn't just take a group of guys who sucked and be like, hey, let's go to the conference finals, even as an 8th seed. I don't care. Right. So different. You can't compare them exactly. I like the contextual example. That's perfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, man,
this was great, man.
I really appreciate you having been on. This has been more enjoyable than I could have imagined. And I think that's the purpose of this, to provide insight and to allow people to see inside the mind of someone who lives unconventionally. Yeah, maybe you're the non-steroid version of the Liver King, or you love wearing toe shoes or whatever. But hey, there's a reason, there's a method to the madness, right? So you're not just the same old basic person that sprints back to their high school to teach and tell stories about how you guys almost won provincials, but came up against X person in the quadruple A final. You know what I mean?
Exactly, man. I love it. Well, thanks for having me on, man. I'm glad that we got to do this, and I'm happy to share some insights and some stories. And I'm definitely looking forward to doing it again. And I'm definitely going to be catching your next guest as well too, man. I think it's a really cool concept, man. I think people can learn a lot from it. Like I know, like I just want to listen to more people that have different perspectives and stuff too, man. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.